Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome everybody again to another episode of our show, bringing you another really fascinating individual today, helping to create a better tomorrow. Today we have the honor of being joined by Diogo Rao, who is Executive Vice President and Chief Information and Digital Officer at Eli Lilly and Company, where he leads Lilly's information technology, cybersecurity, digital health, and advanced analytics and data science functions. Mr. Rao also serves as the chair of a really interesting startup called Prescriber Point, which is a neat digital marketplace that Lilly is actually one of the seed investors in, where ultimately healthcare providers can interface and ultimately find the resources and support they need to help get patients on therapies faster, less expensively for both existing FDA-approved products and OTC products. Mr. Rao joined Lilly back in 2001, and prior to that, he was leading information technology for retail and online stores at Apple. And during his 10 years there, he led the development and implementation of technology supporting both Apple Online Store and Apple Retail stores, including e-commerce platforms, mobile point of sale, Apple Store app, and systems used by the various team members. Prior to joining Apple, he was a partner with McKinsey, where he led the North American IT organization and governance practice. And he began his career as a consultant at A.T. Kearney, later founded a company called Gift Gateway, an interesting software company that brought rewards and recognition services online. Mr. Rao graduated from Stanford with a bachelor's degree in computer science and a master's degree in industrial engineering and engineering management. A lot of interesting topics to get into with him today. We're honored to have him. Diogo Rao, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Wow, I have to say that was a pretty thorough background on me. You've clearly done your homework. I will warn you, I do have, if you ask me any tough questions that I can't remember, I do have ChatGPT going right here next to me. So if I give you any incredibly plausible answers that turn out to be completely factually incorrect, you'll know where that came from.
There we go. You're one step ahead of me because I have not been able to log into it yet. So after trying for a couple of months yet, but it's great to have you, Diego. And it's interesting. As I was doing my homework and background research on you, I thought one of the most fascinating things that you mentioned this early on in your career, actually when you were back in college, you used to tell everybody, although you were a computer science major, that you were an anthropology major because it sounded a lot cooler. I was a pharmacy major that used to tell people I was a computer science major because I thought that sounded cooler. But tell us a little bit about the beginning, if you would, how you got interested in this space in general, because you've been on quite a journey in recent years.
Well, Steve Jobs liked to say that you can only connect the dots looking backwards, not forward. So I can kind of see how my life came together looking backwards, but I couldn't have predicted at the time anywhere, in any way that this all would have unfolded. I probably all really began for me when I was in second grade, and we had a snowstorm in Alexandria, Virginia. Now, I realized that everybody from Indiana and other parts of the country that get real snow would laugh at the thought of a snowstorm in a place like Alexandria, Virginia. But we got snowed in, and we had just gotten a computer. And I really enjoyed playing around with technology. Now, the funny thing is for a few of us that are listening on this podcast that are old enough to remember, the machines didn't actually come with tape drives or any way to write down your program. So I literally had the help of my grandmother, who would write down anything that I had written
Nice.
on hand on paper, and then when you turn off the power, it was all gone. So I think I had an interest in technology, but I didn't know that was going to be where I was going to spend my whole career. When I got to college, something happened, which is I took a class in computer science, and I thought, hey, this is going to be easy because you know what? I've been programming since I was in second grade, and I got a B in the class, and then it made me really mad because of course I should have been able to do better than that. And then I took another class, and I took another class, and before I knew it, I ended up majoring in computer science. That was in the mid 1990s. It was right before, or right actually as the web was happening, and that whole revolution of seeing the possibilities of what was going to come at us was just beginning. But I like to say that I picked computer science as a major before it was the popular thing to do.
Outstanding. And it's interesting. One of the articles that I read about you was in the Chief Information Officer Journal, part of the Wall Street Journal, and you were talking a little bit in this article about how you arrived at Lilly and the CEO and chairman basically said to you, I don't just want you in this new role or set of roles actually that you have to transform technology at Lilly. I want you to transform the way technology is used throughout our industry. And I got to thinking about that, the fact that, okay, that's kind of logical in the sense that, Lilly could come up with this great way to submit information to FDA or to capture information from its clinical trials and so forth. But if it's not the standard, across the industry, it's going to run into some problems. Talk a little bit about, when you were given this mission and sort of what ran through your mind at the time.
It was this mission began really from the beginning, from the original job spec, and it's one of those kinds of things where you wonder if it's too good to be true. Because for a lot of us in technology, we hear from companies that say, or CEOs that say, oh, technology is really important. But then when you meet them, they say, well, I can't even figure out how to work my own computer. You go figure it out. And by the way, can you fix the Wi-Fi while you're at it? And I feel very fortunate that I have a CEO that not only understands technology but loves it. He also serves on the board of Adobe, and I have to say, always has really good technology questions. I dropped by his office one day, and as it turns out, he was fixing his wife's iPhone. And he up on his screen, he was trolling through Reddit for suggestions and going deep into fixes. That's probably not typical for most CEOs, and our board isn't quite typical either. They have lots of great questions on technology, and I have to say, as I look out there now and I look at like what's the board of Southwest Airlines, for example, is like, or others that don't care about technology and where they're going, I feel very fortunate that we have a board and we have a CEO that really cares. So from the beginning, the mandate was to do more. It was not to come in and fix and to operate. It was to do something bigger. I would say I've had free reign to figure out what exactly that means. But the expectation is not that we're going to just be a supporting function, but we are going to be a business, much like other businesses across the organization. What exactly that means or how that takes shape is different, but what's clear in all of it is that we're not in a back of house behind the scenes role.
Absolutely. Another concept that, and this is also in the Wall Street Journal, that they introduce us to is the concept of a digital human equivalent. And I have a quote in here. We measure our cars by horsepower. We need to start measuring our technologies, our bots, or so forth by so-called human power. And this concept of measuring the productivity of automatic processes against what it would cost a worker to do this task. Something we may not think as much about, but ultimately, and I think you pointed out in this article, something like over 1 million hours of human effort that on various processes, whether it's AI and ML or natural language processing, to that later, that you've been able to sort of realize. Talk about this theme of the digital human equivalent, if you would.
We've all been using technology to help automate things that we do for for a very long time, but I think we're on to something very different here. Now, I think as anybody in technology can relate to, who's done an automation project before, what usually happens is you go automate things and everybody says, oh, that's great, you saved a bunch of stuff, and now what are you going to do next? And there's no emphasis put on how do you keep that running. And there is no real savings or automation activity you can do with technology where it just keeps on running. So what's been missing in that equation is to say, there is an ongoing cost behind all of this. And that's where I think it gets really powerful to, instead of talking in the abstract, even talking about number of hours can sometimes feel too abstract. If you turn it into what does this mean in terms of an equivalent work from a human, you immediately get something more tangible because we all know what it means to have one more person working with us. At the same time, humans don't come for free, and neither do bots. So just in the same way that your humans may have to pay them a salary, a bot you don't have to, but you're still going to have costs that you for them to operate. They're still going to have, they're going to use physical space. They're going to have laptops or computing resources. They may have software licenses, whatever it is, there's some cost associated with it. And just like companies have over the years said, we have workers in our high cost locations, and then maybe we have workers in lower cost locations, or workers that are contractors that are at a different rate. What we're proposing here, and what we're actually doing here at Lilly, is having yet another category that says there's another class of workers that still cost money, but they do cost less than others. And so you can then start saying, do I want to spend $100,000 for a contractor and perhaps a lower cost location, or do I want to spend $25,000 a year to maintain a bot? The big thing there is that you know exactly what it is. You have to have your bot metered to be able to compare it to a human, and you have to have a cost associated with it. And you can present that and say, hey, it's going to cost us $25,000 a year, but you'll have that capability.
Excellent. No, one thing, I noticed that people like to ask you about, obviously coming from Apple, where, you have to put out a new iPhone or gadget or whatever the thing may be every X months, into the pharmaceutical industry, where our timelines are significantly longer. And we touched on like with Dr. D'Souza a few months ago at Lilly, talking about things like artificial intelligence and the drug discovery process, which is a hot area. But we don't think about sort of all the other areas that tools like AI and machine learning ultimately trickle into, that enhance or can help shrink that 10 to 15 years of drug development. One of the areas that I've seen you talk about is just in translation. That global companies like Eli Lilly, you got clinical trials and scientific lab data and all sorts of other data out there that's in a myriad of languages. It's got to all be standardized. Talk a little about this. This is one area that, it might seem kind of simple, but no, much more complex, and AI, a great tool to get this done.
Human language translation, just to from English to French or Spanish, or to any other language, is my go-to example when I start talking about this concept of digital human equivalence. And the reason is because we all know it, we all get it. We know that there's a lot of work involved, but we also know that we can meter this work. We can measure exactly how much we're talking about. Translators are often paid by the word, and so we know exactly how much a translation will cost. And so it's very easy for us to get that digital human equivalent model out of that and say, hey, if we translate this document, this would have taken X number of hours, and you add that up over the course of a year, and you can say this would have, we have the equivalent of 3 humans doing now that we're doing through machine translation. But like I was saying before, this requires an investment because you can't just run everything through Google Translate and expect that it's going to work. And for a really good language model, you're going to have to invest in it. In our case, we need to invest and make sure that the language models are, understand our products and the kinds of terms we use in the pharmaceutical industry, and that takes money and investment. So machine language translation is one of my favorite examples, not only because it's so everybody immediately gets it, but it also is a great illustration of what happens when you have that horsepower kind of a concept where, now when you start measuring things that way, it opens up new possibilities. None of us really want to own 100 horses, but we like having the capacity of 100 horsepower in our car when we need it. The same goes for translation, where we may not want 100 translators on our staff, but we want that capacity when we need it, so that overnight we could translate into 10 different languages, something that's impractical or completely impossible to do with just a couple of humans that are fully dedicated.
And in a similar fashion to that example, I another piece of data I thought was fascinating, and this is coming to your sort of your seed investment work in this company Prescriber Point, but I think this fits nicely into sort of your digital health purview as well. In the recent press release about your investment, it mentions how the American Medical Association says that medical practices spend around 2 business days a week just dealing with all the prescribing changes that go on. Oh, this isn't available as a generic. Oh, this is only covered up to $10, and so on and so forth. And we've all been there. Being a
That's
pharmacist, right. I've been on the other side of that equation a
You
lot.
have.
But talk a little bit about sort of your, if you can, your investment in Prescriber Point. I know it's interesting as you work with other pharmaceutical companies in the investment, but at the same point, in 2023, it'd be nice to have a system that ultimately streamlines a lot of this and gets rid of, 2 days a week. That's a major chunk of the medical practice.
It is amazing to me coming into this industry from the outside, just how much bureaucracy is built into these systems. And I can only imagine what it's like for healthcare professionals, and how frustrating it must be when you want to help patients. That's what you got into this. You didn't come into this to do paperwork. I'm sure you didn't become a pharmacist to say, hey, I'm really excited about the paperwork. You wanted to help patients. And the amount of bureaucracy that's in this system is unreal. And it's a real opportunity to clear up. The Prescriber Point concept is an interesting one, because it's a joint venture across several different companies, including Pfizer, including MasterCard, including Adobe. And so it brings a diverse set of stakeholders that are interested in this for a variety of different reasons, but all because everyone here sees that we've got way too much friction in the system. Mm-hmm. So it's something you might be able to relate to. It can be hard for patients to get samples. That's been one of the things that healthcare providers care the most about. Prescriber Point is a great way to be able to get that, but it's also a great way to be able to look up information on drugs. I've been surprised at how hard it is to get good, high quality information, and this is one great way to bring everything together to just take out all of that friction.
Excellent. What else in terms? You have the sort of the data analytics component, which is also part of your responsibility, and that gets you thinking about obviously there's the sheer amount of data in terms of the genomics and the proteomics and all that leads into the bioinformatics space. What's hot in terms of that whole domain not just obviously analyzing it, but at the same time the severe quantity that you have responsible for maintaining in an organization that like Lilly that's been around 100 plus years, whether it's clinical data or drug screening data or whatever it may be. Talk a little bit about sort of what you have to deal with on that front and your new responsibilities.
Well, that's another place where I just feel lucky because of all of the data that we have and the treasure troves that we have. One of the challenges that many data scientists face is the quality of the data, quantity or the quality, but quite often the quality is quite poor, and there are a lot of things that you have to do to figure out what's the data, what should you really put trust in. And here in this world of drug discovery, we've got decades and decades of data that has been meticulously captured, with multiple digits of precision on a large number of parameters. What we haven't done is put all of that together yet and really reached its full potential. We've got we've got several million molecules, small molecules that are very well described, and with it's a data scientist stream in terms of how much information we have on it. It is an incredible opportunity for us for really the next decade and beyond to tap into that and use all of the techniques of machine learning to see how we can help in in drug discovery. I would say sometimes I feel like I'm an energy company that we're sitting on like untapped reserves that we just have not gone into yet. And I do believe that machine learning and drug discovery on just on small molecules alone, is enough to power things for the next decade.
Yeah, the repurposing alone, of those millions of molecules across every pharma company, it seemed like you probably cure every disease possible just by pushing that.
It's incredible. And then the other thing that I think will be really interesting is to start tying that in with genomics.
Yeah.
And there are 20,000 genes in the human genome. I mean, it's not a ridiculously large number. And I think if we, even though the number of base pairs is each person is, it's a large data set at 3 billion or so. But when you actually think about the number of genes that each person has, it's a relatively manageable number. And one of the things I would love to do is start bringing that data in. And I would love it if everyone in the industry started looking at genomic data across all of their clinical trials and started getting much deeper correlations to figure out and predict where you get good responses.
What's looking out 5-10 years, whatever the case may be. I mean, we profile sort of a lot of these I call them bleeding edge tools. They may not be here today in terms of say the in silico clinical trials, but we've talked about digital twins on the show. Obviously, the term quantum has come up a lot. That gets placed on a lot of stuff. Organs that instead of dealing with the complex preclinical live models that you always have to, can we sort of mimic a heart, a kidney, a brain in a computer? What are some of the tools that get you excited? Just, looking out as, obviously you're out there amongst other CIOs in the pharma industry talking about the future. What gets you excited?
Well, it's funny you should mention quantum mechanics, quantum computing, because quantum computing has been just about here, right? Right. 3 years away for the last 20 years. Yeah. And so it kind of cracks me up. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the ChatGPT, and we can talk about that a little bit more too, the impact that will have on science. Sure. I already like it for just the impact that means we can stop talking about the metaverse. We have something else to talk about instead. But I think in terms of where we can use that data and the kinds of opportunities that we haven't really taken advantage of yet, one of the things I think is most interesting is that we haven't captured the human intuition yet among scientists. And when you talk to medicinal chemists, a lot of what they say is there's a huge art in what they do. Oh, yeah. And what we haven't done yet is captured that art and put it into a model. And I know that may sound creepy in some ways, because we're invading we are talking about art and invading a turf that feels distinctly human. But just as we've done that with DALL-E and other things, I don't think there's any reason why we can't start building models around scientists and perhaps individual scientists, and start profiling the way that they think, to be able to train models to think like them, and to be able to look at far more molecules than or targets than they would ever be able to do in a human lifetime or 100 human lifetimes.
While you've taken us down this tributary, I mean, please give us a couple, because I mean, joking, but I have not yet been able to get into ChatGPT. My kids seem to be really excited about it. In fact, there was a couple kids in one of my kids' schools that decided to hand in essays already based on it, and they got caught. But talk about ChatGPT for a couple minutes. What gets you excited? What are you concerned about? Where's the hype? What should we care about? What shouldn't we? Take us into that for a couple minutes, if you would, please.
Well, first of all, just pay the $20. You can go pay $20, and then you can get into ChatGPT anytime, and you can get a slightly faster model. Well worth it. Money well spent. I use ChatGPT all the time now. It is a companion here with me. I don't think this is hype. I know I was picking the metaverse, but we're still not walking around with virtual reality glasses. But already ChatGPT has been around for a couple months, and I find it indispensable with me. I do think that this is the biggest revolution I've seen since the web came about. It brings back those feelings and those memories actually of 1994 when I first saw that Mosaic browser, and I knew that the world was about to change. I couldn't see exactly how it was going to change, but I knew everything was going to be different. And that's, back to my technology story. That's what got me excited. I'm excited to see what this is going to inspire for everyone. But I can give you, just some trivial examples of the way that, that this has changed things for us. I mean, it's
Sure.
I find myself going to it all the time when I might have otherwise gone to Google. Just a simple example, my CEO was talking about something being long in the tooth the other day, and I was wondering, where did that expression come from? Well, I just put that into ChatGPT. It turns out because horses, their teeth don't stop growing. And so when something is long in the tooth, it just means like it's a really old horse. Well, I read that in 15 seconds. I didn't miss a train of thought. I didn't lose any time as Dave was talking. Now, if I had tried to do that in Google, I would have spent 5 minutes clicking through a bunch of things that weren't relevant, maybe have to watch a video and whatnot. And I could completely stay in the flow of things. And I think that sort of co-piloting is one of the things that's the most interesting about this, that you can just take it with you as a companion. That's not even getting to the creative part of all of this, which I think is fascinating. Maybe I'll touch on one thing, because we have this. We had a discussion among the World 50 group of CIOs yesterday, just online, where somebody had asked a question about how. Are you limiting access to ChatGPT, or is your organization limiting limiting access? And so I know that's a hot topic. One of the things that I think was interesting from talking to other CIOs is that a lot of times legal teams can be wary of it, and the organizations in general that have wanted to limit ChatGPT access, it's come from the legal team. And that hasn't happened with us. In fact, I haven't had a single attorney come to me and say, from our legal team, say, we need to limit access to ChatGPT. And I have a hypothesis on why. My hypothesis is, we did a demo of ChatGPT to our executive committee a few weeks ago. In that meeting, our head of legal and chief general counsel said, I have a town hall in 2 days. Can you come show this? And then I went to the town hall and I asked everybody if they'd heard of ChatGPT, and of course everybody had. I asked them if they had used ChatGPT, and only a handful of folks in the town hall had actually used it. And then we opened it up and we said, hey, give us the case law on non-competes in the state of Indiana and the pharmaceutical industry. And ChatGPT comes back with a full answer, and you could see everybody's faces in the audience, or at least I could, because I was the one on stage. And I said, hey, write a patent application for one of our drugs that's out there. And it goes through and it lists all the claims. And it was just, and you could just feel it in the in the room as they looked at it. And you could just see the potential. And then I said, oh, hey, instead of back to non-competes, why don't you write a non-compete for Homer Simpson that blocks him from the donut industry?
Nice.
And it had a nicely populated one, including Homer Simpson's home address. We didn't even have to tell it that. And then my favorite part, actually, at the end of that was that I put in something in contracts that I really think it needs to go into contracts, and I have not seen in contracts yet today, which is I asked ChatGPT to add some emojis to the contract.
Nice.
You know how much easier it is to read contracts, legal contracts, with emojis? It's night and day.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome. That's I wish I could have been a fly on the wall at that meeting. That's hysterical.
And guess what? Since then, no attorneys have said we should go limit access to ChatGPT. And I think that's the whole thing about this, is that and I would encourage anybody who's following along, if you haven't tried it, just go online. You don't have to pay the $20 to do it, although I think it's money well spent. But it will, if you can take it from an abstract concept to something you're starting to use in your daily life, It will change your behavior.
Outstanding. That's awesome. I would love to ask it along those lines. I had this debate with my kids the other day about why something that's easy is a piece of cake, but we'll do that offline. If I go to any pharmaceutical company today on the web page, whether it's Lilly or Glaxo or Merck, what have you, there's usually a partnering page. It talks about, these are all the things that we as a pharmaceutical company are looking for. We want monoclonal antibodies and gene therapies and blah, blah, blah. Talk a little bit about this from your angle, because obviously you got to stay ahead of the curve on these bleeding edge tools. I remember once, I think it was last year, I was talking to somebody from the venture capital industry, and they had seen, it was early in the year too, something like 200 business plans alone that had artificial intelligence and drug discovery in it. How do you stay ahead of the curve? How do you partner when it deals with, bringing some of these cutting edge tools into a major organization like Lilly? Take us through a little bit of that.
One of the most important things is to make sure you don't outsource too quickly. And I think it's really important to figure out, what do you really want to own? Probably the biggest problem I see just in any industry, not just pharma, but especially in pharma, is just a tendency to say, hey, we should hire somebody to do this for us. Whether it's the usual consultants, or whether it's maybe another company that can go build something for you. And too often, if you give that away, you give away all your thinking, and you give away all that future potential. So I like to say, we should give away the boring work and give away the stuff that already exists. But if we have something that doesn't yet exist in the world and it's important to us, then we need to own that. And I think that's really, really important. So if we take that example you're bringing up about artificial intelligence and drug discovery, there are a lot of companies out there that do that are in this space. What we have that's unique is our data, and secondly, our scientists. So we can, if we go synthesize and try something out, we can have the scientists actually evaluate it. And those are huge resources that other companies, other startups wouldn't have. So what's really important there are those two things, much less so the algorithm. If we can find, and if there is somebody that has a hugely better algorithm or a way of doing things, sure, we'll want to partner with them. But otherwise, partnering may just slow us down. If we already have the data, we already have the scientists. What we really need is just to have our own data scientists, our own technologists that can actually go build things and work on really short cycles to iterate. And that's where I have a pretty strong view that if it matters, if it's really important to you and it doesn't exist out there, you need to do it yourself.
Got it. Thilo, as we've been talking, you've taken us through, this amazing journey, even in the last couple of years at Lilly, taking a pharma company, which we normally think of sort of warm and squishy biology, and digitizing it, bringing in these tools, the AI, the digital health. You come from a company that is, Apple. It's we think of as a digital tech company that just announced yesterday how it's involved in the diabetes business now, and they got involved in the heart disease business a couple of years ago. A lot of convergence happening across these industries. What do you think this all looks like 10, 15 years from now? I've heard people say, it's the tech companies that are going to rule healthcare, or is it the healthcare companies that are going to do tech? Where's it all going?
I think the regulators will rule them all. It would be my guess, but I am very impressed with what all of these tech companies are doing to get into these spaces, because what they're doing is they're making it really easy for consumers to be able to get access to what used to be more expensive medical devices, and that makes it possible for them to follow along and to track things on a daily basis. And I think that things that are readily easy, very easy to measure are great candidates and will help a lot. So, glucose is a great example. Weight is great for connected scales. And heart, for cardiology, I think actually you can do some of the basics are good with what you have for the Apple Watch. It's definitely going to be a lot harder for things like oncology and other, in places like that, where you have conditions that may not change on a day-to-day basis, or have variables that are harder to measure. So this is not something that is going to fix everything in the healthcare industry, because there's so much that doesn't get measured that way. But I love the direction that it's heading. we've talked about personalized medicine for a very long time. I do think that
Sure.
that's something is going to really change over the next decade if we can have a couple of these breakthroughs. Once you can take into account, lots of variables. Once you can take into account glucose, and you can take into account your heart rate, and you can take account weather data, and what's the humidity like. If you start correlating a lot of these variables, can we do can we get much more precise about what's a good what is the right dosage or dosing interval that somebody should follow. And so I think we're going to have some. I think if we can bring all the data together, bring the regulators with us, we can have a pretty amazing time of real personalized medicine, thanks to the devices that we have in our hands.
Absolutely. So, Diego, when I and I don't have ChatGPT, but when I put you into Google, the first hit that comes back is Eli Lilly. The second one's your LinkedIn profile, and when I click on that, your picture comes up, but then a really nice picture of a cockpit, a really fancy looking cockpit too, flying over the mountains or something. But I come to see that, for the last 30 years, you have been a credentialed, private pilot. Do you get much flying time in nowadays? Are you allowed to do much flying? And have you always been passionate about airplane? Tell us a little bit about that part.
No, I'd love to tell you about that. And as anybody who flies or a pilot, you just want to spend the entire time talking about it. So it's a good thing you're not a pilot too, because otherwise this entire podcast would have been about flying, and then we would have had 5 minutes to talk about all the other stuff. But by the way, I'm glad you looked me up in Google, because I looked myself up in ChatGPT this morning just to see, and it said that I worked at J&J and PwC. And then I said, no, that's not correct, and it apologized. And then it said, oh yes, he's an executive that joined Lilly from General Electric after a long career. And I said, no, that's still not correct. And it said, well, he's the Apple CIO. And then I just gave up. So this Google definitely scored better. Flying is something that I really enjoy. But now if I go all the way back to the kid that got mad at getting a B in class around that time. That was when I picked up flying lessons. I did my first after my first summer internship. I had a couple of weeks before I went back, used some money from my mom and from my summer work to get flying lessons. But I didn't think through the whole thing about how much flying costs at the time, because of course I was a student. So I got my pilot's license. Then I couldn't afford to go fly and put it to use. So I took a long break for a number of years, and then got back into it in about 2009. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about it was back at the time I was at McKinsey, and after really stressful weeks, you could go up and you could fly, and flying keeps you so mentally occupied that no matter what was on my mind, I was able to clear my head, and it gave me I would get off the plane after a couple of hours and realize, wow, I haven't thought for one moment about what that was that had been occupying my mind, the entire week. And so it's really beautiful. It's really peaceful. It's also a fun hobby for anybody that's an engineer as well too. There's a lot of technical stuff and a lot of stuff to nerd out on.
Awesome.
It takes me to really exotic locations. I know you asked if I'm still flying. So, just the weekend before last, I went all the way from Indianapolis to Iowa City, Iowa.
Oh, there you go.
Highly recommend it. You should go sometime.
I used to do business throughout the rubber belt, so I'm somewhat familiar with the area. But no, it's really fascinating. I love, once again, sort of profiling sort of everything about our guest, and I just think that's a nice little add-on to everything you have going on now. So it's I wish you much success, not just with what you're doing at Lilly, but obviously that you get back to the skies when you want to clear your mind and enjoy that as well. But really great messages. Any final things you want to mention in terms of things that are hot for 2023, in terms of any other public facing projects, conferences that you may be presenting at, places we can see you, maybe meet you. Anything else that I didn't touch on that you want to, please?
Well, anybody can feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk or to trade ideas. And your questions have been excellent because we covered really all of the big things that are on my mind. But I do think that this revolution with ChatGPT is a real thing. It's not ChatGPT specifically, but these natural language generation conversational AI tools is something that's really going to change the way that we do things. I don't think that jobs, any of the jobs will actually be the same, and it's going to be fascinating to see how all of this plays out. I do think that this is going to have a big impact on humanity as well too. If you've probably read about the Bing bot and the challenges with that, but you can imagine that people are going to develop emotional connections with bots that they're talking to, and it will change their own expectations of what a human relationship needs. And I think it's an incredible time that we're living in right now, and with all these rapid technological changes, like any of these other periods in history, it's going to bring a lot of things that we can't entirely predict, and a lot of things that we'll need to watch out for and change. So if there's one thing that I could encourage everybody to look at in 2023, it would really be that. I would get on there, learn, and use it.
Outstanding. For everybody that is going to be listening to this particular episode of our show across the podcast networks or watching on our YouTube channel, again, you've been listening to Diogo Rao, Executive Vice President and Chief Information and Chief Digital Officer, Eli Lilly and Company. Also check out Prescriber Point organization. Diogo, again want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk and educate us for a little while on these topics. Obviously, thank you for everything you're doing there, and really wishing you the best at Lilly. And as we say on our show here, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow through what you're up to. Really, really great story.
Well, thank you so much. It was so much fun to chat with you, and I loved your questions. It was fantastic.
Good seeing you.